Hello and welcome to Spooky Tales of the Pacific Northwest and beyond. It's me, Jennifer, the same person as always is. So today we're going to be talking about Halloween and its delightful beginnings, and followed by some scary stories that were centered around Halloween. So we'll get right into it. So, Halloween is a celebration of fun, costumes, candy, and fright. But the origins of it are actually pretty ancient. About 2,000 years ago, give or take, however many years, the Celtic Irish celebrated the division between the lighter half of the year, which is summer, and the darker half of the year, which is winter. They called this time of the year Samhain, and they considered it to be the most significant of the 4 quarterly festivals, as it would fall between the fall and the winter solstice. So it is pronounced Samhain, not Samhain or Samhain, as some people like to pronounce it. Celtic Irish is an interesting language full of interesting conundrums when it comes to pronunciation. The ancient Celtic Irish considered the division between this world and the other world to be at its thinnest during Samhain, allowing the spirits to pass through to the mortal realm. Those deceased who hadn't had the chance to say their goodbyes could do so now. These festivities usually involve stockpiling supplies and animal slaughter. Guys, this was 2,000 years ago. Get over it. Slaughter happened. That's how they fed themselves. So you can't look at 2,000 years ago with a 2023 lens. Okay, so just get over it. The bones of which of these animals were thrown into large communal fires called bone fires. BONE fires. This is actually where the word bonfire would come from, which I didn't know, and I found that to be pretty interesting. These large feasts and merrymaking would happen at the same time as they would know. Apparently, I can't type very well. All of these feasts and merrymaking and everything that surrounded these festivals would be happening all around at the same time, because they would know that their otherworldly visitors could show up to also partake in those parties, which I find interesting. One thing that I did find interesting that I will touch on just slightly is some of the traditions of Samhain. Actually, you can actually see it in the Mexican Dia de los Muertos, which is pretty interesting. You know, I found it interesting because Dia de los Muertos is a lot of the traditions that they do during that time of the year are deeply rooted in indigenous traditions and stuff like that. So it's very interesting to me that 2 celebrations and festivities happening clear across the world would have such similarities. I love when there's intersectionality like that. It's absolutely a delight for me. But I digress, and let's go on a little bit further. Some of the legends surrounding Samhain also says that more than just human spirits could cross during the thinning of the veils. The fae folk, elves, fairies, and dark energies are also said to have been able to cross that thinned veil to interact with the mortal world. Along with these fae folk and dark energies, sometimes the spirit of somebody who had been wronged while they were alive, like stolen from or maybe murdered, anyhow, they would show up also. So they had started to darken their faces with the soot and ash from the fires, the bone fires, and this would become known as guising. And after a significant amount of time, it would develop into wearing masks. People were said to recognize their loved ones. So when their loved ones would show up during these festivities, they would show themselves to the spirit. But because of the disguises, quote unquote, of the soots darkening their faces, they would be safe from the darker energies like the Fey folk and the dark spirits and stuff like that, or that really pissed off people who were wronged in their living life. After the Roman Empire, so Samhain started to change slightly in the coming years, especially after the Roman Empire had to put the thumbs in all of the things. After they conquered the majority of the Celtic territories, two of their festivals would actually be combined with Samhain. One was Feralia, which was the day in late October when the Romans would commemorate the dead. So kind of pretty similar to Samhain, also similar to Dia de los Muertos. The second day was to honor Pomona, who was the goddess of fruit and trees, which there's a tradition in around the Halloween time where you bob for apples. I haven't done that in, I don't know, years. But this is more than likely the reason why we bob for apples during Halloween is because of this day to honor. It was part of the whole festival and festivities to honor Pomona. Partly because the apple was her symbol. There are many tales and many histories that connect Christianity's various festivals and celebrations to that of pagan roots. I'm not going to get into those tales and histories today. That may be something that I could possibly look into further down the road. But as far as Samhain and Halloween is concerned, the Christianization of pagan symbols, temples, festivals, legends, and religious iconography, this is something that the Christianity has done for many, many years, and it applies to the festivities of Samhain. So in, I don't know, a butt-ass long time ago, Pope Boniface IV had actually set May 13th as All Saints' Day, which was a feast that celebrated all of the saints who did not have a day of their own. I don't know why a saint have to have every single day. It has to be a saint's day. I swear to God. When he actually consecrated the pagan temple of the Pantheon in Rome to Saint Mary and various different Christian martyrs. Just one example of Christianity stealing things. But about a century later, Pope Gregory III would move the date for All Saints' Day to November 1st. Nobody really knows why Pope Gregory did this, and a lot of the reasonings has been pretty hotly debated over the years. I have my own theories and my own opinions, but one of the most widespread theories is that it was done intentionally to Christianize Samhain by turning it into All Hallows Eve, and most people consider this theory to be pretty, I don't want to say proven, because theories and, as they aren't technically proven 100% guaranteed no matter what. There's why they're a theory, but most people do consider this theory to be one of the top ones, because there is an interesting Christian paradigm of the religion redeeming pagan things in an attempt to convert the pagans of various different Celtic territories and various different territories and, pagan, quote unquote, places around the world to make it easier for them to convert to Christianity. I'm pretty sure that I just said that sentence like all fucking cockeyed, but it is what it is. Yeah. So there's a lot of different festivals and celebrations and legends and myths around the world that Christianity has a foothold in that have pagan roots but are celebrated in a Christian or Christianity way. Samhain and All Hallows Eve and All Saints Day is one of those. So Halloween is technically many thousands of years old. So, before Boniface made it All Saints Day, May 13th had been the Roman festival of Lemuria, which was dedicated to placating the angry or restless dead, which was derived from Parentalia for honoring one's ancestors, which was from February 13th to the 21st, and then Feralia to honor those lost loved ones on February 21st. The tradition of Feralia made the living obligated to visit and remember the graves of the dead, as well as to leave them gifts like grain, salt, bread, and wreaths. There is a little bit of intersectionality between Feralia and Dia de los Muertos too. I'm not going to talk about Dia de los Muertos today because that's not my place. If you would like to know more about it, and I don't mean the Americanized bastardized version of it, but actual Dia de los Muertos, look it up. Find somebody who practices that tradition and ask them about it. They might decide to tell you, but that's not my place. So there we go. Samhain was much the same as these Roman festivals, and once it became All Hallows Eve, it became a day of vigil, prayer, and fasting to prepare for All Saints Day, which doesn't sound very fucking fun at all. Much of the old traditions like lighting fires were still observed, and by the 16th century, the practice of souling had become an integral part of the festival. So souling was when the poor people in a town or a city would go about, different places, different doors and houses, and knock on the doors and ask for a soul cake in return for prayers. Kind of like it would actually, evolve throughout the years into trick-or-treating. It just a little bit different than our trick-or-treating, I guess. There's so many different stories and histories that surround this time of year that I absolutely love. And maybe next year I'll give myself a little bit more time to be able to go into more of that, but I didn't give myself enough time, even though you would think I had. Samhain and its rituals would arrive in the United States with the immigration and the displacement of the Irish during the potato famine in 1845 to 1849. The largely Catholic Irish would bring with them All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day, and All Souls Day, along with the practice of souling. By this time, folk traditions like jack-o'-lanterns had become attached to these festivals. And an interesting thing about jack-o'-lanterns is it is said to be attached to a folklore, an Irish folklore tale about a man named Stingy Jack, who was very, very clever, and a drunk who fooled the devil into banning him from hell. That sounds really interesting, and I might look into different folklore, and maybe Stingy Jack will be on there because I want to know more about Stingy Jack. So anyway, Stingy Jack also couldn't enter heaven because he was a sinful man as well. So he would actually wander once he was dead, deceased. He would wander around the world carrying a small lantern that was made from a turnip with an ember inside to light his way, like a little, lantern. So, and I'm pretty sure I said that already, but whatever. So the Irish folk, when they came to the United States, would hollow out turnips, carve faces into them before placing a candle inside. They actually did this to protect themselves from spirits like Stingy Jack when the veil between the worlds was the thinnest. So they would probably use it to ward off evil spirits and the fae folk and fairies, etc. This is where the tradition of carving pumpkins came into play. They went from, pumpkins to turnips. They continued going door to door and carrying candle lit turnips And this would be the beginning of the Halloween celebrations and traditions that we know today. Turnips would turn into pumpkins, people going door to door asking for candy and treats instead of soul cakes. And it actually still has its, what the word escapes me. It has some, Samhain was about transformation, going from one season to another, and people coming and spirits coming and the veil being thin. And they do say that a lot of those same traditions about the transformation during Samhain can be seen when people dress up for Halloween, because you go from one to the other, and you change from you to whatever costume you decided to wear for that day, because it's different from your own face, and all of that is it's a call to the traditions and celebrations of a holiday. I don't want to call it a holiday, but a festivity that was taken, changed, redeemed, quote unquote, from the pagan Celtic Irish, and kind of, I don't know. The word is like right in the tip of my tongue, but I can't think of it for the world. But it's been taken from what it was and changed into what it is. And now it is a holiday of, dressing up and scary stories and haunted houses and candy and, decorations and transformation. And I freaking love Halloween. I didn't get very many trick-or-treaters, but that's okay, because there's always next year. And I am gonna, I don't know, make sure that I have I don't have a porch light. So the light that I have is kind of a motion sensor one. So maybe that detoured some people, but I'm gonna fix it next year. Anyway, so that was a brief history of Samhain and Halloween, and how Samhain turned from Samhain into the Halloween that we know today. It was very brief. I probably could have did better, but it is what it is. So now I'm going to read some stories, some ghost tales, that have to do with Halloween, and I hope you enjoy them. So, and again, these are all taken from yourghoststories.com. One of these days I'll remember to link everything. So Silverio Sanchez writes, and he is also from, I'm assuming it's a man, Washington State. So in 2004, on October 31st, I witnessed a very disturbing image that still haunts me even today, now that I am 25 years old. I was 9 years of age at the time, and on that day, I spent the entire time at home with the whole family watching movies and eating chocolate candy, as one does. We never really celebrated Halloween, not because of our beliefs, nor the fact that Halloween was such a scary holiday, but rather the fact that my parents never understood the reason why people would waste money on costumes or risking us children getting into an accident. I can understand that. Well, throughout the day, we decided to watch a few films that we had rented in order to spend the night with the family. I also watched films this Halloween. As a young child, I had always had a passion for drawing, so I always carried a sketchbook with me wherever I went. That night, as we watched movies, I began to doze off and had the desire to draw rather than watch the movie. Lucky for me, my sketchbook was on my bed in my room. As I walked towards my room, I opened the door and walked in. While the lights were off and my bedroom window open, I looked to my right to turn on the lights, but as I faced my right, I could not help but notice the disturbing image outside my window. What I had seen outside my window was the head of a pig, but not an ordinary pig. The flesh seemed to be beaten so bad, the snout ripped apart, the left eye gouged out, and the ears ripped off. That's fucking horrifying. The only detail that really stood out was its red glowing eye. As I stood for a few moments staring, I could not move as I was paralyzed. I wanted to walk out of the room as quickly as possible, but it's moments like these that fear wins over our actions. This is true. Years later, I tried to search for more cases relating to the supernatural involving the bodiless pig. I never really found any sources relating to my experience until I heard the case of the Amityville haunting. The long story short, the young boy who experienced the strange phenomenon at the Amityville house also witnessed the bodiless pig outside his window. What does this mean? After all my research and wanting to understand, I finally came to understand that things are better left alone than explained. Sometimes. A lot of times. Till this day, paranormal activity has still been active in my home, and myself, including my family, have become used to the phenomenon. About a year ago, I ran into the family who lived on our property before my parents purchased the house in 1996. As we talked about the experiences that I and my family have encountered over the years, the father of the family did not seem so surprised. As I explained the headless pig apparition, he also talked about his experience witnessing the same pig head outside his window. I understand I was only 9 years old when I witnessed the demonic entity outside my window, which could have been all in my head or imagination. But what is the coincidence that the family before us who lived on the same property witnessed the exact same image outside their window? I should have got some water. So I'm pretty sure that if I witnessed something like that, I would be absolutely terrified. No, thank you. So, the next story is by Strawberry Babe 2010. And this takes place in Colorado. Courtner Road in Pueblo is the place to be on Halloween. Everyone goes there, freaks each other out, goes home, and gets drunk. That sounds like a lot of different places. That's all there is to do in Pueblo. That's pretty much all there is to do in Forks too. But on any other night, it's just a regular road with regular homes, or regular houses, excuse me. One morning at around 1 a.m., my cousin Matt and I were goofing around after hours thinking we were cool. We drove by the old Courtner house. It was really scary. I had been past it a few times, but never really looked at it. It's burnt down and half of it's gone, but the basement is still there. Matt parked the car he turned off all of the lights and told me the story. Old man Courtner lived there with his wife and 2 kids. He was a member of the KKK. He would kill African Americans in his basement. Well, trigger warning. I apologize for not popping that out before I started. So trigger warning, death, animal abuse, etc., etc. Also, infanticide. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I should have read this one before. He would kill African Americans in his basement. One day he went crazy, killed his dog, and when his wife asked about it, he chased her through the woods around the house. Finally, he caught up with her and shot her. He shot his son too, but the daughter, he hung her in a tree so people driving by could see her. I could feel shivers, and I told Matt to drive the car. Wow, that's heavy. He took off slowly. He glanced in the mirror to see cars behind us. He hit the brakes and smacked the rearview mirror. He looked at me and then kept driving. Nothing was said. It was too scary for the both of us. I glanced up in the mirror and saw the scariest face looking back at me from the back seat. I turned to the back seat and it was gone. Matt kept driving. We were way too afraid to tell each other what we saw. We drove a little further and we saw a little girl walking across the street in a light pink dress. I started to scream. Matt swerved so he wouldn't hit her. We wrecked right in front of the tree that Courtner hung his daughter in. I checked the gas gauges before I passed out. We were flying from 20 to 90 back and forth. Matt was flying around the entire car. I had my seatbelt. For some reason, it unbuckled and hit me in the face. Just before I hit my head on the dash, I saw Courtner. I know it was him, standing in front of the car. Our car jolted and I was knocked out. When I woke up, Matt was sitting motionless in the driver's seat. I asked how long I had been out, and he said only a few minutes. He got out of the car to check the damage, and we hit an electric fence and 2 barbed wire fences and a tree. That's a lot of shit to hit. The car had barely any damage. We were about to, it's a lot of shit to hit, but you could get away with no damage. We were about to back the car out when the back end lifted up. Matt got out and went to check. We were stuck on nothing. We drove home. A few nights later, we had to prove to our friends that the Courtner stories weren't just talk. They were real. Matt was in the backseat with his friends, Trent and Clint, and my friend Jennifer was up front. Jennifer. up front with me. I pulled the car up to the entrance to the house. I shut it off just like Matt did. Our plan was to go into the basement, but when we all got out, Matt didn't. We thought at first that he was scared, but his door wouldn't open. We pulled on the locks with pliers and tried to pry the door open, and it wouldn't budge. Finally, we all decided to get back in the car. We drove a little ways down the road, and I saw Courtner in my rearview mirror. Jennifer saw him out of her side mirror, too. He stood watching us in the middle of the road behind our car. I didn't want to scare Matt. He was already shaken up. A little while later, my seat belt tightened. Now, it didn't just pull, it tightened so hard that my seat got knocked backwards. I started to cry and threw the seatbelt off me. We couldn't believe it. We finally got back to the South Road. We went to take Trent, Clint, and Matt home. When we got out, we saw from the outside in the back window Matt and Courtner Road. Ever since that night, if anyone mentions Courtner Road, Matt can't see out of his left eye, and I get a bloody nose. Every time. Never again will Courtner be viewed as a party place on Halloween. It wants me and my cousin to go back and never come home. Well then, if that is a true story, that is fucked up. Just gonna say. So next story is by Mr. Riggs, and he is out from Kentucky. And this does have some animal death in it, but it's nothing too outrageous. And it just talks about some animal death. In November of 2017, I submitted a story to Your Ghost Stories regarding my departed Schnauzer, Mr. Riggs. He had returned from death to visit his home and family. Last heard from Halloween night of 2017. I thought him gone for good. Apparently, I was wrong. There are indications that he has returned. This story is about that return, and I think more. I want to tell you about this experience because what happened is absolutely real, and real encounters are what Your Ghost Stories is about. Still, I don't quite know how to explain what took place. I can manipulate words well enough to tell the story. I just don't know how the story I'm sharing with you is possible. There was more death. That is the best place to start. The last of my 3 Schnauzers passed on October 19th, 2018, known as the Rascal, or simply Rascal. That's cute. His death was expected due to illness. Still, his passing was ugly and came sooner than we anticipated. It always does. Once again, we experienced grief, sorrow, and tears at the loss of a beloved pet. But Rascal's death is only a small part of the stories. There are more interesting things to share with you. Here's some information that will help you understand what took place before Rascal passed. Rascal had a morning routine that I had to be attentive to, in part because he was blind and needed help. The routine included feeding, watering, medication, and being put outside. After all those things were done, I would head to the shower to start my day. About 3 weeks before Rascal passed, I heard clicking canine toenails in the hallway outside my bathroom door. This meant Rascal was making his way down the hallway to be let out into the backyard. Our home has laminated flooring, and the sound of a walking dog can be heard quite clearly. I opened the bathroom door and saw nothing. Rascal was nowhere to be seen. It didn't occur to me at the time, but I had just heard the same sounds I had described in this story. Mr. Riggs walks. To be honest, Riggs never crossed my mind. I thought him long gone and only in memory. The clicking sounds in the hallway repeated 2 or 3 times during that week. 2 weeks before Rascal's departure, the clicking in the hallway seemed to gain momentum. It continued at an increased rate. It always happened when I went to the shower. Rascal was seldom the reason for the sounds, as he was nearing his death and his behavior was changing. During this second week of toenail tapping, the occurrences had more or less doubled. The week before Rascal died, the sounds of tapping toenails grew still more frequent. The day before Rascal passed, it happened 5 times in 40 to 45 minutes. I checked on Rascal each time, and he had not left his bed. It appeared he had not even moved. His routine had been abandoned, and he refused to eat or drink. I knew Rascal was in trouble, and we were nearing the end. I'm very sorry. I didn't know what to make of the noises in the hallway. I was annoyed at having my showers interrupted, failure to get Rascal outside would mean cleaning up a mess, and because he was blind, we were very attentive to his needs. Rascal was the priority and the clicking a nuisance. My previous experience with Mr. Riggs was never considered. I wondered if our cats were doing something that created these sounds. Even as I write this, I question my own behavior. All I can say is my concern was for my dog and a hot shower to start my morning. Then finally, a cup of coffee. That is everybody's wonderful morning. We took Rascal to our vet after he took a turn for the worse, and his doctor had been treating him for months and was very familiar with him and his condition. Rascal's doctor was joined by another veterinarian, and together they examined him. This and then said it was time. After all our efforts to provide and care for him, it appeared Rascal had developed cancer of the liver or spleen. In Rascal's best interest, his life was gently brought to a close. Our hearts were broken yet again. You see, he was not just a dog, he was the last of our family. Our home took on the feel of a tomb. That's really sad. It was as though sorrow hung in the still air. All 5 of our friends were now gone. There were times when I was alone that I cried out in anguish, as though my soul was emptying itself of grief and torment. It was involuntary, and when it happened, I did not recognize my own voice. I heard and met a new me, an unfamiliar self, this the result of realizing my family was dead. Yes, I know, not very manly of me. After all, they were only dogs. Those 5 who had been a large part of my family since 1974. That's a really fucking long time. They had shared my life, even my bed, for more than 40 years. They were only dogs, but we had bonded in an inexplicable way. We were pals and more. We shared a lot of love, those pals and I, and now they were gone. Dogs will love you always, and it will fuck you up when they die. And it is okay to cry for your friends who die, especially when they have 4 legs and have a tail that wags. After Rascal died, everything fell into place, though it took a little time to put it together. I think Mr. Riggs returned and walked the hall. He was, I suspect, warning me of Rascal's coming departure. More importantly, I think Mr. Riggs was coming for Rascal, to accompany him, or perhaps to lead his friend to what comes next. They had lived their lives together and were like brothers. Oh, it's going to make me cry. I think they loved one another and that their love continues beyond the grave. But this is not the end of the story. There is more. During the nights of the 21st, the 22nd, and 23rd of November 2018, I was visited in my bedroom by the spirit of a dog. Call it a ghost if you like. Whether I woke in order to experience this or was awakened by it, I do not know. The first night I had 3 irregular and slow footsteps on our bedroom floor, which is also laminated flooring. It was as though a dog was unsure of himself. The second night there were 3 footsteps, more certain this time, though slow, like the dog was searching for something. The surprise came when I heard the dog sniff several times, then snort as though clearing his nose. The third night, I heard 3 quick, steady footsteps, which seemed to say, "I'm out of here," then silence. Yes, I heard the toenails clicking against the floor. Each visitation was between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., with 3:15 and 3:35 being 2 specific times that I recall. Those are the witching hours. The sounds came from the foot of our bed, near the side I sleep on. Rascal's bed is still located near the foot of our bed. I think the late night caller was Rascal. Perhaps I was given the farewell we could not share at his passing, as he had been anesthetized to control his pain. There is little else to tell. I have no substantive knowledge about ghosts or hauntings, and very little experience with the dead. I can offer you no real explanation as to the how or why this happened, only speculation. What I can say with certainty is this did, in fact, happen to me. That is a very good story. I very much liked it. Okay, next story is by Country Guy 91, and he is also from Kentucky. This one isn't super long and may not be very scary to most, but it stuck with me for a long time. So here goes. It was Halloween night, I think 2014, once again in my hometown of Richmond, Kentucky. My cousin, his girlfriend, and myself were riding around and went out to get some candy to hand out to trick-or-treaters when they came. We decided to take a shortcut back to his place since we kind of got a late start because we lost track of time. Been there, done that. It was around 6:45 p.m. and the sun was going down, which didn't help the fact that the road we took, Old Crutcher Pike, is dark, kind of creepy, and very crooked and narrow already. We turned down the road, turned on the headlights, and headed towards his house, which was about 2 miles away. It seemed to get darker the further down the road we got, probably because there weren't very many houses or lights around. I decided to roll the window down. It was particularly warm for October, around 63 degrees. Kentucky weather is crazy like that. So is Washington weather, you have no idea. So now, the window down, I'm paying more attention as we pass by what few houses there are. We come across a couple mobile homes next to one another, one with a carport, and directly across the road was a small dilapidated shack. Then I saw it, and by the look on my cousin's face and sudden hurry to get off that road, he did too. Under the carport at the back of two cars as we drove by, we saw a man in black slacks with a white old-timey shirt and a black vest and cane, standing beside a woman with white lace-lined dress with a white lace-lined dress and a bonnet, just standing there staring at the shack with big glowing eyes that look like reflectors. We got about 3 football fields away and pulled over. We both looked at each other and said, "Did you see what I saw?" We talked about it and both agreed we had. So we turned back around and drove back by in the opposite direction and saw nothing when we passed the house. We turned around, left the road, and went to his house and ended up eating way too much candy. Me too. Because the kids had already stopped for the night. Mine too. I believe what we saw was real, and I know he does too. But for anyone who has a logical approach, I can't say that it couldn't have been a setup. But if it was fake, just to scare people, then moved or something, it was a very, very good one. Also worth mentioning, the land my cousin lived on all around was known for being in Indian burial ground and really old farmland. Okay, so we're not going to like demonize Native American burial grounds, and they're not the source of every single scary thing to happen. Okay, let's not do that. I can believe the really old farmland though, because the people did look like really old farmlanders. Thanks for reading, and any input appreciated and welcomed. All of my stories don't have something to do with eyes, just this one and the first one I posted. So there's a recurring theme around this country where people use quote unquote Indian burial grounds as the catalyst for hauntings, dangerous hauntings, demonic hauntings, and stuff like that. That's almost a racist kind of thing. I don't even want to say almost, but it kind of is, because it dives into that whole like idea that the Native Americans were, these evil people who, were terrible and all that kind of stuff, which is not true. That is far from the truth. And I really hope that as we, it is 2023, one would hope that this was already something that happened. But as we continue to investigate and believe in all of that kind of stuff, and hauntings and apparitions and interactions and stuff like that with the other world, that we will stop using Native American burial grounds as a scapegoat. Someday that will probably happen, and hopefully it will. So next, off my soapbox, sorry. Next story is by Bettina Marie. I do believe we've already shared a story by Bettina Marie before. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember, but I think so. Anyway, she is from Oregon, and she writes, "Many years ago, I was part of the Portland restaurant scene, working and partying after hours in haunted buildings around Portland downtown metro area. It would be very interesting to see if anyone else had similar haunting experiences back in the day. In Portland, my favorite haunted place you could visit is a historic movie theater where I have volunteered sometimes. All of Portland's historic theaters are wonderful spots to visit for a certain supernatural thrill, as well as some more modern cinemas in the suburbs. I have come to enjoy the neighborly type spooks that seem to hang out at these spots, or at bars like the Belmont Inn, Moe's, or Embers, looking for a good time. I have shivered walking past the darkened Old West dance halls, but have only been frightened to go near a few places like the old brick prisoner jail when I live downtown. Jails and Pioneer, not prisoners, sorry, Pioneer Jail. Jails and prisons tend to coalesce hauntings and apparitions and things like that. That building was terrifying to walk close to or even look at. I don't know if any of those places are still standing. The second level of the Galleria shopping mall is some place I will never go back to for $1 million, even if it was still open. It feels like the mouth of hell. The Burlingame neighborhood also made me intensely uncomfortable. Mount Tabor Park has always given me the awful creeps, but that may be because it's a live volcano within city limits. What the fuck? Seriously? I'm going to have to look that up because that's wild. Here are some Portland haunts. At 20 years old, I was a barista for a Halloween charity, all ages rave, held in the building which used to be the Night City Club. It was apparently under renovation. I was new to town. I'm not sure when the club had shuttered, but the old club furniture and a lot of bar junk was still there. It was a very casual gig, a favor for a coworker, and I was stoked to attend. Halloween is my favorite holiday, girl same. I had never been there. I did not expect dirty floors and rigged lights showing holes in walls from old equipment and torn out wiring everywhere. It felt old but had 90s decor, possible squatters. My coworker was there early to set up. This is already wild. More people we knew were expected to party until late. I came in and followed upstairs, the back way before dark. Someone took me through to an espresso bar set up next to piles of dusty, half-trashed club junk in one of the open spaces for dancing. We had to go through some narrow, dirty service corridors, which came out by an old bar top. I could see out the windows to the street front of the building at the top of the trees until it got dark. Everything was all set up, so I just stared out that window, waiting for the DJ to start the party. The longer I was there, I became so lonely and sad. I kept thinking about just jumping out those windows or just laying down behind one of the big amps to die unnoticed. That's dark. I was in despair, even though I loved to dance and dress up. I actually closed down about an hour after the music began. Everyone else was having fun. My friends in the party were great. The night was young. My outfit was foxy. Love that. I wanted to get the hell, I wanted to get the hell out. The walls felt like they wanted me out too. I had friends who rented places so haunted, I'm not sure how they stayed. One place was in this gorgeous, huge old boarding hostel near Northwest Vaughan. It was all original wood and had these terrific wide staircases. It smelled like like only old wood buildings can. I know that smell, and it smells wonderful. The rooms were clean with nice big windows. Each floor had shared washrooms with private showers and toilet cubbies. Those are poop closets. Once when I had to wander out alone late at night, I became suddenly very much aware of somebody I couldn't see. It was like having a pal along to powder her nose. I barely slept whenever I was visiting. I had friends in a tall apartment building on Alder by the church. The ancient cage elevator in that building is very crowded. She has quotes around crowded. I used to walk to and from work faster past the scary old civic apartments. I only went inside them once, which was deathly uncomfortable, especially the hallways like visiting a morgue. I wish I had not. I'm glad they were torn down. I really disliked walking within a block or two of the train tunnel in Goose Hollow. I want to look that up. But I also adore the neighborhood late at night. Every shadow seems aware. I like how I like how she worded that. Every shadow seems aware, and the street lights are lovely on the trains in the rain. I liked living there. In Old Town, there used to be rooms for rent above this Seder Icon Club. That's an interesting word. Where one never felt alone when one should. Not in a bad way, just how old buildings are busy, quote unquote, sometimes. Like someone came back to make sure the kettle is off and stayed for your company. I also like how she wrote that. My friend who lived there was a fishmonger at an upscale market off Northwest 21st. It was a bright, busy place in a small brick building, which was very extra loud, especially after the customers you can see had left. I lived in several supposedly haunted houses, but never anywhere scary. One person I knew had a ghost which would spoon her and comfort her if she cried. No, thank you. Also same. No, thank you. She lived north of Burnside and near Stark in an upper apartment. I worked the bar for 2 lunch shifts at a downtown restaurant called Fernando's Hideaway, trying very hard to avoid looking into the mirrored wall. After just 2 trips to the dirt-finished hella creepy basement, During one agonized solo shift where I was actively dodging around certain weird spots on the second floor, I called my old boss on the east side and begged her for my job back. I was just fine with whatever haunted her restaurant. It sometimes said hello, especially to any red-haired female staff, and seemed to hang around upstairs mostly. That's where the projection booth had been, before the theater became two busy restaurants and the Army recruiter's office. To me, the connecting rear hallway was sort of extra dark, although always lit. I've been in places like that before, and it's really, I don't like that vibe it gives off. I have only been on the Army side a few times and always just quickly running food. I never discussed the haunt with the cafe crew next door either. Our haunt was very fond of one certain hostess and had touched her, said hello to her by name. That would freak me the fuck out. I always just hollered out a general greeting when I was first in the door, making certain to peace out as well. It's very polite of you. The haunt would tease one feisty chef hiding her knives. That would piss me off, and she'd swear at it under her breath. I would also do the same. No one was ever scared, though. It was a family place. I miss that building. My first job downtown was as a shift supervisor for a bakery on 6th and Alder. I always felt like there was something hanging out in the back room near their prep table. My friend Max worked there too. We would get off work at 2 in the afternoon and start drinking. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, I guess. One of our favorite spots was a Chinese place a few blocks away. It was called the Gateway Lounge. Then, over time, it has had many names. It even was a set in a TV show called Stumptown. I've never heard of that show. This was a gorgeous dark bluish stone building with original long hardwood bar tops and fancy brass trim. It was a hot music spot at night, then a slow corner bar for lunch. Just us punters watching sunbeams through the legs of upturned chairs. As we got into our cups, he would casually tell me things like, "Oh, our bakery is haunted. This place is haunted." Or, "I choose this table so my back is to the ghost by the kitchen door." That would just creep me out. I cannot find it on Street View because there's a new high-rise, I think. Sorry, it's my bedtime. I never went there without another real person, even though I really enjoyed the general atmosphere. The buildings which used to be bathhouses on Stark Street, all seem haunted to me, which I have visited. The places which were Roxy's and Cassidy's also made me feel like I had company who I could not see, but in a friendly sort of way. I only went to Paul's Fish House once and felt nothing off. Then years later, I went to a job interview in the upstairs part of that same block and left before they called my name. Something about the place felt sinister and wrong, even in the bright daylight. After the white plaster work on the columns were hungry. I really like how she words some of these things. Anyway, those are a few Portland stories from back in my day. I hope you have enjoyed reading them. Please comment why you remember these places, blah, blah, blah. I might have to look up some things about Portland and check some of this stuff out and possibly maybe talk about some ghost stories from Portland that maybe some of these things are connected to, because those were really interesting. And she has a really good way of turning a phrase sometimes, but that is her Halloween episode. It's a bit longer than normal. It was, even though the history of Samhain and the Halloween was a little bit brief. Maybe someday I'll go into more in-depth detail, but it's difficult because I may go on some tangents, and nobody likes when I go on tangents. Well, I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. Like it or don't. I'm not your mom. I can't tell you what to do. Anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed their holidays or their Halloween. I had some trick-or-treaters. Not a whole lot of trick-or-treaters, but that's okay. I wasn't expecting a whole lot. Hopefully next year we will have more trick-or-treaters. But I dressed up as a big, giant, inflatable dragon, and I went to work like that, and everybody loved it, and I got stuck in a door. So that was my Halloween. Next week I'll probably do some more ghost stories, readings, or something, or maybe I'll do an actual episode. I apologize for not doing real subjects in my episodes lately, but sometimes reading ghost stories and tales are easier to do. But I do want to do alien abductions and aliens. Also, this is the last week for my class, and then I'll have 3 weeks off. So I hopefully will do some, not be lazy, and I will do some episodes pre-recorded for a couple weeks. We'll see. So I hope everybody, like I said, enjoyed your Halloween. Please send me your own stories. I would love for somebody to send me their actual stories who listen to my podcast. I would love it very much. You can send them to me at spookypnwpod@gmail.com, or you can also send them to me via a DM if you would like to on Instagram at spookypnw podcast. And I will get some stuff up for Halloween and Samhain. Oh, excuse me. On the Instagram. So yeah, join me there. I maybe might dive into the Patreon again. We'll see and what happens. Yeah, so everybody needs to take a nap, go to bed, whatever you want to do. I'm not your mom. Can't tell you what to do. Do what you want. I'm going to bed. Enjoy your Halloween. If you're drinking, please call a taxi, call an Uber, call a sober driver. Do not drink and drive, because everybody wants you to be here. Nobody wants you to be smashed in a car. Thank you. Please do not drink and drive. Call for a ride. Stay safe. Be scary. Keep it spooky. Enjoy Halloween. You should love Halloween. Okay. Thanks. Enjoy your day. Bye.